right, this Thanksgiving, we'd like to thank our listeners for being part of the SiruisXm family. Let's go over to the phone right now for a few minutes and welcome in a gentleman that we've had on this show in the past, both from cruises and on the phone. He is the legendary drummer from ELP, and of course his time in Asia and other great contributions to music. We now welcome to the show Carl Palmer. Carl, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine. How are you? Good to speak to you again.
Good to speak to you as well. And I think this is real interesting what you're doing. I know you've got a couple dates now under your belt. Welcome back, my friends. The return of Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. Tell my audience about this, Carl. You're going at this an interesting way and paying tribute, of course, to your late bandmates.
Yep.
Tell me about this idea and how you put the show together.
Okay, so what we had originally, we had a hologram program that we were looking at, and we researched it. This has been going on for about 18 months, 2 years. We looked at some companies in LA. We looked at what they were doing. I went to some shows. I've seen the Whitney Houston, like all of us, and seen the Ronnie James Dio. I went to a Frank Zappa show in London, and for some unknown reason, it didn't row my boat, as we say in English. It didn't get me. It was okay, but it didn't seem natural. It didn't seem sincere. It just felt fakey, impregnating a face onto an actor and getting him to mime the parts and things. And it just took a long time to go through all of that and realize it wasn't right. And then we started looking at, well, what have we got? Have we got some footage? Have we got anything? And I didn't come up with it. Anyway, so my manager came up with an idea of using some footage from the Royal Albert Hall in London, which we had released in the mid-90s. It was 2 nights at the Royal Albert Hall, holds about 4,800, and we recorded both nights, a 5-camera shoot, and we had a separate mobile unit. So all of the instruments were recorded individually, and to cut a long story short, it got released as a DVD, Emerson, Lake and Palmer at the Royal Albert Hall. So that got released on Sanctuary, and Sanctuary sort of sold out within about 3 weeks of the release of this DVD to Universal. So the DVD didn't really make a lot of headspace, a lot of room in the market. It didn't cause a big impression. When you have those changeovers, product usually suffers drastically, and this one did. Anyway, I had a look at it all, and because it was a 5-camera shoot and there were many edits that we could make, I figured I'd have a look at this, because why not show Greg and Keith at their very best, at the top of their game, and it's them. It's honest. It is them. It's not a hologram. It's Keith Emerson doing what he does, and it's Greg Lake doing what he does. Went through it all. I had to remix it, take away the drums, because I'm going to play the drums live on stage, in situ, with Greg on the screen and with Keith on the screen. We have 2 screens. They're 12:9 each side of the stage, then another large screen downstage, 16:9, and there's different things being projected all the time. So I did the editing, about 9 weeks of editing, and looking at different camera shots. As I said, a 5-camera shoot, so I got plenty to choose from. And where we were missing, we found other footage from other formats that would work, and we got it up there. And I managed to get quite a lot of material that was workable. I mean, some classics like Lucky Man, Knife Edge, Welcome Back, My Friends, Fanfare for the Common Man. And I thought, well, we've got it now, because here are the guys, playing their very best, looking great. We can control the audio, because it's the original audio with them singing and playing minus the drums. I'm going to put the drums on every concert. I will play along with them as if we were a band. And that's basically what's sort of going on here. So we put the show together, and I looked at sort of integrating my group into the set. So I've got a piece of music like Welcome Back, My Friends, the Show That Never Ends. It starts off with ELP playing, and because we never played the whole piece that night, I haven't got it. So all I've done is I've actually edited it in such a way where my band comes in and starts playing, and we finish the piece off. Then we go into like Knife Edge, which is complete with everyone. Lucky Man, which is complete. Paper Blood, which is complete. Fanfare for the Common Man is complete. And it's worked like that. So really, it's a bit of history in the making here, because no one's ever used or been able to use live footage of this quality. Look, it's not IMAX, it was mid-90s, but audio-wise, it is absolutely superlative because every instrument was recorded individually. So that enabled me to be able to take the drums away and give you the exact sound of those guys on that night without any interference. So very, very pleased with it. I know it's probably the way the music industry is going to go. In fact, I know people like McCartney have put Lennon on the back screen at the back of the stage, and then McCartney's sung some harmonies with him. But I'm actually playing. I'm the only member left in the group, and I'm playing with the other two guys. Like this is a whole show, you know. So it's been very exciting, quite emotional doing the editing, as you can imagine, getting it right. I believe that this is the only way the guys would have liked to have seen it, because the holograms wouldn't have gone that well with them. And what's most important of all is that the Emerson family and the Lake family are totally behind the project. And from my point of view, that had to be that way. I mean, this is me paying my respects back to them in the best way I possibly can, using the technology of the highest, which they were both into the technical thing, you know. They're both technos. They just always wanted to get the latest and the best. I mean, that's what ELP was all about. And I've managed to use that attitude or that kind of mindset to actually be able to put this show together and bring ELP back to a lot of people who probably heard about it, but never ever saw it. And are probably still listening to the music and wish they'd gone to more concerts. Well, now's the chance. And the last two nights have been sensational, by the way. Absolutely sensational. I mean, the look on the audience face when we start playing as the three of us, Emerson, Lake, and Palmer, is just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So Carl, just to be clear, then, for the performances that you had full songs from and full video of the guys, that part of the show is you playing drums live, and that audio is actually of the guys playing live. So they're seeing them and hearing the instruments are their instruments from that night back in the 90s at Royal Albert Hall with your live drums.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
And then the parts where you didn't have coverage, the other guys come in. So,
yeah,
and then your band fills in the holes.
The other guys, Paul Bielatowicz on lead guitar, Simon Fitzpatrick on the Chapman stick. We play other ELP pieces like Hoedown and Carmina Burana, which is Karloff, but it's a classical adaptation. We play those pieces integrated into the actual sort of whole show, as it were. So it's a whole thing. It's what I've been doing for the last, whatever years with these guys, plus it's the ELP part of the show. But it's all integrated. It's not just all ELP, then my band. It's in and out, and so it's a complete show. It's made up. I mean, we end, with things like with Paper Blood, Lucky Man going into Fanfare, and that's all sort of like ELP, and Fanfare for the Common Man goes into America, goes into Rondo, and Keith Emerson does all of his tricks, that he used to do, riding the L100, sticking the daggers in, all that stuff. And, I'm there in situ playing with them because I've got the drums in my monitor. I know that it was there originally, but they're really low, just for me to use as a metro, a meter, a time reading, or whatever you want to call it. So it's quite metrionic from that point of view, and I can keep time and play with them as if they were on stage with me. That's what it is, and that's what technology has enabled us to do, which is absolutely devastating. It's just unbelievable. It's really an emotional sort of moment to be able to create that with a high quality of the fact that the DVD was group approved and released. So I'm using stuff that they approved, we approved as a group. So to be able to reproduce that and take the drums away and have that moment in time is just phenomenal. It's just, it's a dream come true.
Carl, how do you feel now as a drummer playing? Because I often ask this question to drummers that I know as they get older. A lot of drummers have issues with their hands, their wrists, their arms, their shoulders. They've had surgeries. They've had problems. They can't quite play like they used to. I mean, I've seen you play not too long ago, and you still play amazingly well. But how do you feel? Do you have those aches and pains, or have you been able to overcome that?
I don't have any aches and pains. I had both of my wrists operated on my wrists operated on about, could be like nearly 14 years ago now. And apart from that, no, I'm fine. I mean, basically, health is my main thing. You know, if you're not healthy, you can't play. And if you do something as physical as what I do, it's really important to, to keep your health in top notch. And I don't mess about. I mean, I've got a philosophy. I'll be very, very honest with you. I can still improve. My feet are getting better playing the double bass drums. I know that I'm improving slower than I did before. That's normal, because things get a little bit harder. I will carry on whilst I'm improving. If I can't improve, but I can maintain the standard that I like, that I want, which is like now, I'll carry on. The minute I can't maintain my standard, my high standard, then I'll stop. You won't hear from me. I'll just disappear. In the ether across the lake, I'll just go. And that's how I look at it. So for me, if it means I've got to look after myself and, not drink and not smoke, which I've never done anyway, then fantastic. If that's all I've got to do to get what I want, that's easy.
Yeah, speaking of video, I wanted to ask you about this too real quickly. I had a chance. I was on a plane. I'm on planes constantly, but on a recent flight on the Seatback Entertainment, I came across an old ELP documentary that they had that I guess had been restored. And it was from like 71 or 72. Yep. And it was like a 40-minute documentary film that I'd never seen. And I watched and I found it fascinating because that period of ELP was a bit before my time. I was a little too young to have experienced that. But it showed you guys, it was like an on-the-road concert film. And it showed you guys going throughout all these different countries and the enormity of the band setting up, playing stadiums in all these countries and locations. What can you tell me about that film? And is there more to it? Because it was only like 40 minutes.
What you saw was the BBC documentary, which we made. And from that particular documentary, I actually used a clip to start my show. I actually used, if you saw it from the very beginning, you would have noticed they had these large trucks on the road and there was an aerial view. I don't know how they did it at the time. I can't remember. It might have been some kind of drone or whatever. You saw the name Emerson, Lake and Palmer painted on top of the trucks. I actually used that to actually start off my show. That's one of the things at the very beginning, apart from many other things that happen before we come on stage, on screen. So I've actually used a little bit of that because that's part of the history of ELP. That was a tour of Europe, and that as you correctly said, it was in the early 90s, 70s, and 70s, and that was the first sort of documentary or rockumentary we ever happened before we come on stage, on screen. So I've actually used a little bit of that because that's part of Mr. Lake and Palmer painted on top of the trucks. I actually used that to actually start off my show. That's one of the things at the very beginning, apart from many other things that happen before we come on stage, on screen. So I've actually used a little bit of that because that's part of the history of ELP. That was a tour of Europe, and that as you correctly said, it was in the early 90s.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Tour of Europe, and that as you correctly said, it was in the early 90s, 70s, and that was the first sort of documentary or rockumentary we ever made.
Yeah, it's really interesting timeline to go back 50 years ago and see a band on the road at the enormity that ELP was, playing these gigantic stadiums and how they did it at the time. It's fascinating. Everybody can check out Carl performing and remembering Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Welcome back, my friends. The return of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You just heard from Carl how it's being done, and the next show is happening tomorrow night in Wayne, New Jersey, Shea Center. Then you go to Patchogue, New York City on Friday at Town Hall, New Haven on the 26th, 27th, Boston, December 1st, Arcata in St. Charles, Illinois, December 2nd, Des Plaines Theater, Des Plaines, Illinois, and last date right now, December 3rd in Akron, Ohio. What's after that, Carl, for you, or are you going to try to do more of this? Have you decided yet?
Yeah, well, to be very honest with you, we only ever booked 10 concerts because I was just doing this as a payback, as a respectful thing to both of these great musicians. And this was, as I say, the most honest way, not using a hologram. So we only put 10 in, and the East Coast was always the best area, or I say the best area. It was the first area that ELP ever played, and so that's all I did. But the amounts of warmth and the social media remarks that I've been reading and what's sort of going on, we've decided that, yeah, we will do more, and this could even go global. I might just take it around the world. I've got a great team now. We've built it up. We know the problems. We can keep on improving. So from my point of view, this is something which I will take out, and we'll keep it going. And I've even last night, I even started investigating like other pieces of music, other situations where I could incorporate them and bring them into like a different show for the future. But yeah, I think I'm going to do it. I mean, the families, I just got some emails back from the Lake families. They've been reading social media, and they just love all the remarks and what's been going on. And the encouragement is there, So yeah, I did it for me because I'm selfish, I'll be honest with you. But I think I'm going to have to share this with the world now.
Well, everybody get out there and check it out. As I just mentioned, all those are the dates coming your way. It sounds like there might be more. You can find out more at carlpalmer.com. Carl, always nice to visit with you, and good luck with this, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Fantastic. Great to speak to you again. You take care. Thank you for the interview.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
There he goes, everybody, Carl Palmer. And I'm telling you, if you get a chance and you can see that documentary, it's really cool. It's only about 40 minutes long, and it was on, what's that, Amazon? Amazon has that platform that's like part of Amazon, but it's all music, the Coda collection, which I think there's an upcharge to watch. It's crazy, all the streaming stuff and the charges or whatever, but it was free. It was on an airplane. So I was just clicking around, and on the back of the Seed Entertainment, I'm seeing an ELP documentary from 71. I'm like, wow, this looks cool. And it just puts you in the time in buses and airplanes and 50 years ago, what it was like touring, at that time for those bands. And what you take away from it, which is amazing, which I think people forget about, is how huge Emerson, Lake and Palmer were back then in the early 70s. Like, yes, they are known as pretty much one of the pioneering, if not the pioneering, progressive rock band, but they were one of the prog bands that crossed over. They had bona fide hit singles, and they transcended just like the hardcore prog world. And they were a stadium act, especially throughout Europe in the early 70s. And this film takes you into that. I think there's a part in the movie where Greg Lake is sick and he can't play the shows. He has a vocal thing, and they're talking to him in his hotel room, and there's a stadium sized audience waiting to see him, and he can't speak, so he can't do the show. And those are the days where you didn't go say, well, the guitar tech's just going to go out there and do it tonight. Those are the days where it mattered who was and wasn't in a band, and bands canceled shows when somebody died or couldn't play or couldn't sing. But now you've seen we've come full circle, because now Carl is doing ELP with Keith Emerson and Greg Lake, sadly no longer being with us, with these projection screens. I remember years ago, my parents went to see Elvis Presley at Radio City Music Hall long after Elvis died, and he did something similar, it sounds like, to what Carl's doing with this, where Elvis was up on a screen and his live band played under the screen. Again, just furthering my point that nobody ever ends. Due to technology, for good or bad, you now have bands that can seemingly keep going forever. Whether fans buy it and accept it is all case by case, but everyone's going to try something, even in death, sadly, to keep something going and keep it out there and get a chance to put it in front of some people and maybe make some money. All right, thanks to Carl Palmer for checking in. Always good to visit with him. Easy guy to talk to. You tee him up and you let him go. He sells his stuff and gets off.